Question for everyone, question for this segment. Do you need to read the comics to enjoy the movies? Now, some of you may know, some of you may not know, but the Point 3 podcast here, we have been making a good effort and push to read and catch up on these characters. Spider Brando's hitting us. Tom, he's hitting us already. No. No. So I agree with that, but I also disagree to an extent. And I will go back to one thing that James Gunn has said, which you've heard Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds. And I think Deadpool and Wolverine is a really, really good example of it. And Spider Brando, you've been reading some Deadpool and Wolverine lately. There's a level to these movies now to where the Infinity Saga, right? You had if you didn't watch the movies leading up to it and you went to Infinity War, you may enjoy certain aspects of it, but you're like, what the hell is going on? Like everyone else is like crying, everyone else is happy. Like the emotions are just a lot higher than I feel like they should be, right? But then you get something like a Deadpool and Wolverine. You may not have to have any context in terms of who the characters were in the comics, but for people like us, that's how we got to know and love these characters and where that emotional attachment was made with them, right? So when you get into the movie aspect of things, you have your history of these films, but it's the characters in the comics that really created that foundation. And James Gunn was saying, you don't necessarily need to do all this homework, Sean Levy. You don't have to do this homework for all these characters or watch all these movies or know what's coming from the pages, because you can just enjoy it for what it is when you sit there. So Spider Brando, I know I've seen, I think we both have seen each other kind of evolve over the last, couple of years of just comics to movies and what we kind of look at. I think Flash, if you guys want to get a really good insight into this, go back and watch our Flash review before the movie came out. I think that's probably our best example. That or Spider-Verse is really good. But what do you think about this, and kind of what's changed for you, over the past, year or two in terms of this topic?
One, I do kind of agree with Tom. I can't read. I like the pictures though. But the pictures make it better because you could just look at them and go to the next page. No, I'm kidding. I read everything. Over the past year, I've read a lot of comics, more than I have in the past 3 years combined, which isn't like much. It's still like maybe 6 or 7. And I've been reading a lot of stuff that's been relevant to what I've been watching or talking about on here, and it's just made me appreciate a lot of that stuff a lot more. So going into after watching Deadpool and Wolverine, I've read this Deadpool versus Wolverine comic, and it was just beautiful to just read it in Ryan and Hugh's voice, and just your kind of inner monologue as their voice, and seeing them recreate scenes straight from the comics that were you saw in the movie. I remember one had when Wolverine stabbed him and had they're in the abs like that. It was straight from the page, and I was like, wow, I saw that live action. And that makes you think, it's damn, they really, if you've read that and then see it live action for the first time, that's even crazier. So it's kind of it's weird. You don't have to read to enjoy, because like I said, I never read it before, but I totally understand if you do read, why you feel like other people should read.
I think the thing to add to that too is it depends on what kind of fan you are for that genre or the content you're consuming, right? If you're a casual fan, I think you can enjoy a movie just by going. Deadpool and Wolverine is a really good example of, you don't have to be a regular for the MCU, a regular moviegoer, a regular comic reader.
Yeah.
You really could enjoy that movie. Now, I think for us, we kind of teeter across various genres and fandoms of that regular to hardcore fan. And you get kind of two aspects of this, because this is a very loaded question. for everyone, because you can look at this in so many different ways. But you said something very interesting of like, I saw the movie and then I read the comic, and when I read the comic, I hear the voices of the actors that I really enjoyed, which made me really enjoy the comics. Although the art in there is fantastic, the story is fantastic, the people that are behind it, the
Mhm.
characters, all that sort of stuff is there. You elevated the comic via movies, where you can flip that in a lot of ways and elevate the movies for the comics, which ties into, like James Gunn was saying,
Ooh,
you don't have to be someone who's watching all that. But if you are someone that's following all these things, or you are someone who's kind of invested like a hardcore, because we hear you, we know you exist, there's going to be a pretty big payoff for you when you go along this journey with us.
I agree with that because I wanted to add to all the Superman prep that I've been trying to read too. I
Totally.
can't wait to see from the comic to the live action perspective. So that's why I'm kind of like, I don't know. You don't have to read. You just gotta appreciate everything.
But I want your thoughts on this, because outside of comics, right? Let's just talk about reading in general. Dune 2. I
Oh
think
yeah.
Dune 2 was a really good example of, you don't necessarily have to read the books to appreciate the movies. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, like this isn't just limited to comics. Even Sonic, I'm throwing that out there.
I was
Everyone's gonna
thinking
be like,
about that too.
go ahead.
No, I was just like earlier. I was just when you're when you were talking earlier, I was saying, oh yeah, like Sonic is just like that too. Like I just got all those Sonic comics.
Yeah.
Seeing that live action now is gonna be wild.
Honestly, I only think like doing that extra legwork elevates and enhances your experience for better or worse. Because, I think like the Harry Potter books, people are just like, they cut so much out. Like, how can you guys enjoy these movies? How is this production fun? For me, it's fantastic. I loved it, but I also like the books. Same thing with different, but like Dune, they cut some things out. There are things about characters you're like, I wish I had more, but the books are like, here is more. Same thing now, getting back to the comics. For me, I'm very much in the camp of, if you read, I'm probably going to enjoy the movies more, because I've gotten all that, like, what's going to happen kind of out of the way, which I know for some people is like, I don't know if I want that. But I look at Sentry, I understand the character so much better reading 18 years, no, 23 years worth of Sentry content over the last week. Shout out Marvel Unlimited. I'm sorry for all of you who hate the digital aspect of this, but it's helped me kind of get over what we always talk about here at the Point 3 podcast of that first watch. Going back to Deadpool and Wolverine, like, what's the expectation? What's going to happen? You're looking for these things. Can I really enjoy it? I think when you read something before and you have background knowledge, you can appreciate, like you were saying, Spider Brando, a lot of things so much more. Just going back to even the beginning of this live stream, Sonic, your appreciation for the character has been there the entire time because you have a lot of prior knowledge, reading, going through the comics, seeing these characters, Shadow Love, all that. For me, I'm like, I don't know, but I see the trailer and now I'm on the bandwagon.
It's wild how it works.
Honestly. So I don't think that there's a defined concrete yes or no answer to this, but let's just stick with the MCU specifically. From what you've done with Spider-Man, even Superior, looking at all these characters, do you think that by you reading these omnis and issues, it's going to help you enjoy these movies more moving forward when we do ultimately get these characters, or at least hints at these characters, or storylines involving these characters?
I would say yes. I think I'm just gonna use Superman as an example.
Mhm.
As an example again. I like I've said many times in our previous discussions, I never really cared for Superman growing up. So getting to read his story and background and finally understand him as a character more, I can't wait to like connect with what James Gunn is cooking.
Th-
And were
that
you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's very interesting is because this is post Man of Steel. So like you've
Yes.
seen Superman. Talk to me about that a little bit. Like you've seen that character already done, and for a lot of people, something their favorite, like Man of Steel, is top of the list for a lot of people. But then reading this stuff and knowing kind of what James Gunn is saying and kind of projecting that onto the movie, I think that's pretty interesting to be like, I know the character now, but it differed from what you saw before, I think.
Yeah, no, I Man of Steel, it's got its flaws. I have mixed feelings about it, but I, I don't really like a dark Superman that much. And I know he still had his Superman moments and everything. Cavill did look great as him, but I'm excited for this nice just everything I've seen from the set photos and James Gunn has talked and referenced about it. Just a nice, like, truly hopeful, go lucky Superman that it seems like we're gonna get. But there's also people out there that have probably read all these Dark Superman comics and are like obviously obsessed with what Man of Steel was, so
Yeah.
and all that. And Zack Snyder's future visions for the character. So I feel like this just keeps going back, circling back. You gotta appreciate both. Kind
Yeah.
of whatever you watched first or whatever got you hooked into said project. Just appreciate it and appreciate the other sources that it comes stems out of.
Yeah. Yeah. No, very well said. I think you saying that got me on my like final thought on this is when you attach yourself beforehand, right? Prior to, I'll say this. I think you can really elevate a movie based on this one thing. When you go through and you read a comic, an issue, you find that artist that made it look really good and you see that adapted from a live action perspective with this suit, it elicits a response in you that's favorable. That's a plus. That's like maybe it's like a times 10 multiplier in a way. You're like, I love that look. I recognize that look. This is great. My expectations are a little bit higher. It'd be tough to take those down. But then when you have a story and you have a new character portrayal, such as like you're saying with Superman, mainly the all-star Superman feel and type of character that he is, because I think I forget exactly. I think maybe that's our intro to Road to Superman. You had a really, really, really good take on who this light, bright, hopeful symbol of hope type of character is for Superman. So when you watch the movie, and because you've read that, you've identified, and you're like, this is some of the best stuff I've read. This is one of the best characters that I've really done a deep dive into.
Mhm.
That's a massive, massive plus for the movie because I feel like we just fill in all the other blanks that kind of come with
And
it.
that was only after like one All-Star Superman too. I still have this Superman omnibus to get through, and I still want to read so much more. Just like what you're doing with Century right now,
Oh my
and
gosh!
what I have to do with Century.
Please read any Century Story by Paul Jenkins is just like, where has this been my whole life? I should never have slept on Century like that. It was just, it's been there all along, and I'm like,
But
it's
now,
not gonna.
how does that temper your expectations for Thunderbolts now?
I mean, listen, I don't think the MCU is gonna adopt much, but if they take a few pieces, whoa. I mean, not only look out for the movie, but look out for the future of the MCU in a lot of ways. Now that they have a lot of the characters in play, that's the other tough thing. I'll say this: going through and reading these things, there is a negative side to this, and that is I wish that we could have gotten all these characters from the beginning. Reading World War Hulk and now reading Sentry, it made me want to kind of like hit the reset button, and I kind of am a little bit more hopeful for a reboot so that all of these characters can kind of originate around the same time. Because for those that don't know, I mean, the Sentry Serum, the Super Soldier Serum, Wolverine, Weapon X, Weapons Plus program, like that's all intertwined, and we're getting a very like broken tchotchke version of it in the MCU. Shout out to Cat 4 with Adamantium. Spoiler for those who didn't know. I'm sorry, but I kind of wish there's kind of a clean slate for all these characters. I mean, shoot, even going back to Spider-Man 4, like we were talking about, New York could have been wild from the jump.
And
You
that's
know,
crazy you said that because Tom literally just had a clean slate of being freaking Spider-Man and just everybody forgetting about him. And
yeah, but
now it's just multiversal, potentially.
yeah, they're like, hey, you should forget about everyone. Everyone's like, my guy's 100% MCU, and they're like, oh, by the way, everyone in the multiverse is gonna have to learn who you are, and they're like, what?
Makes it's wild.
What was the point? I don't know. All I have to say after this is Doctor Strange. I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna leave you with a cliffhanger. Doctor Strange moving forward in the MCU. Help this man's soul or souls. I don't even know what it's gonna be. I don't know. I don't know. But any final words on comics versus movies?
Doctor Strange. I do have 2 final words.
Okay.
You gotta keep watching and you gotta
Ooh.
keep reading. And then you gotta keep nerding out about what you just watched and read and how cool it originates from one and the other.
Wow.
Boom.